Good afternoon. I am sorry that I am not able to address you in person today. Sadly, Kathmandu is far from the state of New Mexico, where I now live. I would like to thank Dr. Karki and the University of Nepal team for making it possible for me to address you, even if asynchronously. As may have been mentioned during my introduction, I taught history at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for 26 years. I retired this past summer. At MIT, we have a small but steady stream of Nepalis who study with us at both the undergraduate and the graduate level. It is our great privilege at the Institute to welcome the best and the brightest of Nepal's youth into our community and to learn from them as they learn from us. I have made a point of getting to know many of these wonderful students who come from different socioeconomic backgrounds and different religious traditions. Some have grown up in the densely populated Kathmandu Valley, while others have been raised in the countryside, sometimes far away from the interconnected grid of modern life. Many of them have told me that if there had been an institution that offered a curriculum and educational philosophy in Nepal similar to what they have experienced at MIT, they would have seriously considered remaining in Nepal for their education. While I selfishly hope that your country's talented youth will continue to come to MIT and other American and global institutions for their college education, I also think it is extremely important that these gifted individuals have access to high caliber educational options in Nepal. I believe in the University of Nepal project because I think that it will offer your young people this possibility. The liberal arts curriculum that Dr. Karki and his colleagues are developing is at the core of this promise. And the relevance of the liberal arts in 21st century education is what I would like to discuss with you today. Now, you may be wondering why an MIT professor is speaking with you about the liberal arts. After all, MIT is rightly known around the world for its preeminence in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the so-called STEM fields. What is less widely known is that all MIT undergraduates, regardless of their course of study, must take 1/4 of all their classes, or a minimum of 8 subjects in the humanities, the arts, and the social sciences. There has been a similar liberal arts requirement at MIT since the founding of its School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences in 1950. Please note that date, 1950, 5 years after the end of World War II, at a time when American science and technology had led to victory on the battlefields of that horrific war, and was buttressing the country's strengths in manufacturing, industrial innovation, and the burgeoning field of information technology. At that high point of American military and economic power, the nation's preeminent Institute of Technology committed to requiring that students be exposed to the liberal arts as part of their undergraduate education. And I am proud to say that MIT has continued to require all of its undergraduate students to pursue a broad-based, coherent introduction to the liberal arts for the last 73 years. Before I say more about this aspect of the MIT undergraduate curriculum, allow me to define what I mean by the term liberal arts. Now, because I am a historian, I would like to take you back 800 years in time to the European Middle Ages, when the first Western universities arose in Paris, France, and Bologna, Italy. The undergraduate curriculum of these medieval Christian universities was the first liberal arts curriculum. It was divided into 2 sectors, the quadrivium and the trivium. The quadrivium, consisting of the 4 fields of arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, provided tools to analyze the physical world created by the Christian God. The trivium, which included grammar, logic, and rhetoric, offered training in the communication skills necessary to explain this understanding of the world and the afterlife to other Christian believers. This religious paradigm for education held sway in Western universities until the 19th century. After the revolutionary upheavals in Europe and North America around 1800, it was clear, both to intellectuals and to government officials, that the mission of the university needed to be rethought along secular lines. From around 1800 to the end of World War II, the modern university, funded by the emerging nation states of the West or by private citizens, arose to train individuals in the fields deemed most useful to these countries and their citizens. Professionally, this meant that the goal of the universities was to prepare young men, and after World War II, increasingly young women, for careers in engineering, science, medicine, law, diplomacy, journalism, management, and other fields necessary to the success of the modern state. It was thought that in order to prepare individuals to become contributing members of society, basic instruction was also necessary in the arts, the humanities, the social sciences, and the natural sciences. All members of advanced democratic societies needed a foundation in secular ethics and morals, an appreciation of the great works of art and literature in the so-called Western tradition, a familiarity with the basic elements of math and science, and an introduction to the dynamics of human societies. Such a background would prepare them for meaningful, lifelong contributions to the well-being of their nation and their fellow citizens. This, then, is the theory of utility behind the modern notion of the liberal arts. For a nation to prosper, it must, of course, have well-trained doctors, lawyers, engineers, and administrators. But it must not rely solely on its technocrats. For its spiritual happiness and material well-being, it must strive, as far as possible, to educate all of its citizens, to make them productive members of society, willing to contribute to the common good, sometimes at the expense of their personal interests. These educated individuals must also be ready to criticize the government and their fellow citizens in constructive, respectful ways that when change is needed, and work with those with whom they differ to improve the well-being of all. To achieve these goals, broad-based study in the fields of humanities, arts, and the social and natural sciences is necessary for a liberal arts education. Students should take classes in history, in the study of their own languages and those of other people, and in areas that explain collective human behavior, such as anthropology or economics. They should also have exposure to theories and practices in the natural sciences. For example, they should be exposed to the theory of quantum mechanics and have the chance to conduct rigorous experiments in laboratory settings. And they should have the opportunity to explore their own creativity in fields such as music, drawing, or dance. The intellectual goal of such a specialization, the intellectual goal of such an education is not specialization. That comes later at the graduate level or beyond. The purpose of a broadly conceived liberal arts education is to teach students how to ask a lifelong set of questions that will enable them to continue to grow intellectually and emotionally for many decades after their formal education ends. To my mind, the purpose of an undergraduate major or specialization in any one field is to acquaint the students with how much they do not yet know about literature or chemistry or sociology, and to give them the tools to pursue their passions after graduation. When I teach a class on the French Revolution, I want to convey the basic facts of the revolution and the different ways they have been interpreted. But I also expose the students to historiography and research methods, to the ways in which historians know about the past, because these approaches make clear both the importance of that history and the difficulty of knowing anything about the past with certainty. The benefits of this broad-based approach to higher education are evident, even for a student majoring in something as specialized and rarefied as computer science at MIT. Yes, that student will receive an advanced technical training that will allow them to innovate for Google or Microsoft. And many of our best Nepali graduates have gone to work in the US for such companies. But they will also leave our campus with a set of questions that will allow them to interrogate the impact of their highly technical skill set. They will not just learn how to develop a more nuanced AI. They will also acquire the habits of mind that will allow them to think critically about the economic, social, and moral implications of their work. Now, of course, we do not always succeed in giving our MIT engineers historical perspective or a social conscience. I am sure you can think of exceptions to this idealistic picture from recent newspaper headlines. But I can share with you the reports I have received from many MIT alums with whom I have interacted on campus or elsewhere. When I mention that I teach history at MIT, they almost invariably recount that it was their exposure to the liberal arts at MIT that has become more and more valuable to them as time went by. The skills they acquired in their technical classes quickly became outdated once they entered the workplace. But the questions they pondered about the proper form of government, or the beauty of a work of art, or the value of a human life, these have continued to be relevant for them decades after they left MIT. The liberal arts that serve these goals are not just a curriculum, but also a type of pedagogical philosophy and practice. A liberal arts approach encourages active participation in the learning process. There are times in the classroom when it is justified for the instructor to lecture to the students. I always spend time lecturing to my students, just as I am lecturing to you right now. But there are other times when students learn better from a more interactive classroom experience. There are probably an infinite number of ways to have students interact with the instructor or each other, from a class discussion to a team project, to a classroom in which the students actually prepare the material and teach it to the other students. There is a place for the expertise that an instructor can gather over decades of researching, writing, and thinking about a topic. But there is also value in allowing students to explore concepts and materials themselves, individually and in groups. This kind of classwork, when accomplished in a critical but supportive environment, can benefit students in a variety of ways. The students learn from each other, and as they teach each other or work together to achieve a common curricular goal, their confidence in their own intellectual capacities increases. So to sum up, a liberal arts education makes each student a generalist, while also exposing them to enough in-depth disciplinary knowledge to understand the contours of an academic field and the importance of specialization at a higher level of education. The liberal arts create responsible citizens who understand their obligations to each other and society as a whole, and find a way to balance personal goals and achievements with the common good. And they create lifelong learners who are well-equipped to continue their education and adapt to the rapidly changing nature of the contemporary world. In short, this is an education that, in the broadest sense, prepares students for success in the workplace and personal fulfillment and participation in their local community and the nation at large. Now, I have just given you a broad and necessarily vague sense of what happens in the ideal liberal arts classroom, the one that I know the University of Nepal team is working to create for the benefit of the nation and of future generations of Nepalis. But let me also give you a concrete example of what such a classroom looks like. The video I'm about to show you records the first iteration of a class I team taught for the last 7 or 8 years at MIT. This class is called Making Books in the Renaissance and Today. In this class, we combine lecture with detailed study of books and prints made in Europe 400 and 500 years ago. The key component of the class is a hands-on experience of a Renaissance technology, that of letterpress printing. As you will see, the students built a wooden letterpress based loosely on the design of the German metallurgist Johannes Gutenberg and his associates in the 1450s. They made their own rag paper, and then they printed on it. In subsequent versions of this class, students have written, designed, and hand-printed texts as long as 24 pages on a variety of topics. The video lasts about 4.5 minutes, after which I will offer some concluding remarks. Books are more than just empty vessels that contain information. The way they were made tells us not only about technology and fabrication, but it also tells us about the users, the people who read them. And so in a historical sense, it's an incredibly important set of insights into the cultural and intellectual and social history of the period that we're studying with students.
If you really want to understand the kinds of things that have shaped the human experience, they're never just of one type. They're never just physics or chemistry or history or literature. They're going to be all those things put together. And this class has offered our students, I think, a very tangible example of those boundary crossings at work.
So there are three kinds of experiences that we have built into the syllabus for our students. The first is a typical set of discussions that we have in a history class. The second part of the class that we built in is the contact with the historical material, going to the Rare Books Library, going to the MIT Museum and seeing the maps and engravings that are several hundred years old. The third part, if we think about this as mens et manus, hand and mind, is the hand part. And there, what we've asked the students to do is work in the hobby shop to build a replica of an early modern printing press, and also to experiment with the manufacture of paper.
So in order to build the press, we needed to come up with an appropriate design. We had made the decision that it would be made out of wood. The wood itself was kind of interesting because we were reclaiming a timber from an old mill building in Clinton, Massachusetts. So it was all what's called longleaf hard pine. These are very large pieces of wood, 10 by 14s in cross section. So the first thing that we did was to saw it up on the bandsaw and then surface it on the joiner and the thickness planer into the dimensions of the pieces that we wanted.
Most people here find it really exciting to not just get to learn about something, but to build it and to make it happen and to get to the point where there are problems with it and have to problem solve.
I very much see the value of having the students actually work with some craftsman's tools and to develop some appreciation for what it means to take a full beam, a log, as it were, and turn it into pieces of wood that can be put together in a way that is stable enough to manage the pressure of actually dropping a heavy weight onto a platen so that an impression can be made. And until they actually try this themselves, I think it's very difficult for them to appreciate what's involved.
There are tremendous misconceptions about how things are made. And the good thing about this is you really take them through the whole process and they really have an understanding after it's done of what's involved as opposed to what you imagined was involved.
I think MIT students have an interest in preserving good forms of old technology and not just moving forward without looking back at what was good about the past. And being able to engage with history in the same way is really powerful for students here.
More and more the students who come here have interests beyond the lab, beyond the virtual world, and are able to engage with some of the deepest and most profound questions in humanistic study. They're not only builders, but they're artists as well. It's this rounded student whom I knew would have a wonderful time with this class and whom I knew I would have a fantastic time teaching. And that's the way it's played out. So, why do I consider this class to be a model liberal arts experience? First, It invites students to enter the mindset of people who lived 500 years ago in a time and place that were very different from the world they know today. By exploring the impact of printing on religion, politics, and science, the students come to understand that nothing about the human experience is eternal. We challenge them to rethink their current preconceptions by explaining how print contributed to intellectual earthquakes 500 years ago, such as the Protestant Reformation or the Scientific Revolution. Second, we allow the students to handle material objects created 400 and 500 years ago, including written manuscripts, early printed books, and maps and engravings. Studying the design choices made by printers, cartographers, and artists centuries ago serves as a bridge to the past. These objects were used to transmit knowledge, and sometimes false news, in an era before PDF files and social media. Finally, the students must work together to create their own printed books. They jointly write the text, lay out pages of type and carve images on linoleum blocks, and then ink the type and images and pull the press to imprint words and pictures on the page. They rely on each other, and they are exposed to the methods of disseminating knowledge and entertainment in the age before pixels and iPhones. I love the moment in this video when Tasha Schoenstein, one of the students in the class, praises old technologies that still have merit and meaning. And I should add that after Tasha graduated from MIT in 2016 with degrees in computer science and math, she enrolled at Harvard to complete a PhD in that university's History of Science department. Her doctoral thesis examined the history of computer science as an academic discipline, with particular attention to the history of interdisciplinarity and the history of gender and computer science. Today, she is working in a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. She is what we might call a Renaissance woman, someone who has mastered the most advanced technical and financial skills of the day, yet has also thought deeply about the historical context and ethical implications of the fields to which she contributes. In my view, the world needs more people like Dr. Schoenstein. Now, am I going to tell Dr. Karki and the University of Nepal team that they must implement their own version of this Making Books class? Well, of course not. Although they are certainly welcome to do so if they wish, and I will be happy to help them design the syllabus. But I think that the liberal arts idea that I have been tracing for you is capacious enough to suit the educational goals of 21st century Nepal. Our class on Making Books was designed with the needs of MIT students and the resources available on the MIT campus in mind. The context in which the University of Nepal will operate is necessarily different. But the fundamentals of a liberal arts education, the broad-based exposure to the variety of human knowledge, and the emphasis on learning for a lifetime, these are applicable in your country. What kinds of classes might students at the University of Nepal take? Of course, they will be offered languages. They will be offered courses in the languages and literatures of Nepal, South Asia, and other parts of the world. Of course, they will be able to study the religious traditions indigenous to Nepal, Hinduism and Buddhism, and compare them to the world's other major faiths. I can think of no greater laboratory anywhere in the world for the study of biology than the stunningly diverse landscapes of Nepal, with their rich biodiversity of flora and fauna. And I can imagine, with great excitement, a course of study devoted to the captivating traditions in the visual and performing arts of Nepal. In other words, the liberal arts can certainly have a Nepali inflection, and liberal arts institutions in the West would be wise to follow this curriculum as it develops and integrate these innovations into their own curricula and pedagogical practices. Once University of Nepal students have gained a foundation in these various disciplines, they will also be ready for interdisciplinary work, like that I described in the Making Books class. What might those classes look like? That will be for the faculty of the University of Nepal to decide. I can't wait to see how that curriculum evolves and to watch as the students of this promising university graduate and become enlightened citizens of your country and of the world. Namaste.